Hello and welcome back to another week of the DP World Tour picks and bets. Skylar, Hoak joined here as always by Tom Jacobs. Tom, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Looking forward to another week on the DP World Tour after what was pretty exciting in Kenya last week.
I think it was a re-energizing event for me. Like legitimately, like just Kabugu taking the storm on Friday. I mean, that was one of the best things we've gotten to see as a show. Here just not only like the moment and having to do that in his country with so many people following him, but the fact that we had like what felt like just as many on golf Twitter like following along too was really cool.
It was good. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. And then obviously Casey Jarvis getting the win, get a monkey off his back. So good for him. Stand up hat there. Davis Bryant gave him a good run. So
really
love that event.
Really positive.
I'm excited for Davis Bryant. I mean, at this point, I think he's top 20 in the rankings. Has himself another shot this week too, now that he's earned himself in the field via that way. We're going to dive right into it though. We will just talk through here, probably on a quicker show for the South African Open Championship. One of the, cooler events that we get. I love that it's, this kind of swing of golf when you go Kenya, South Africa. Like I love this time because you get the combination of the fields. So it provides a little bit of just, I guess, what we like to do in a research perspective, where you can kind of get some telling tales on guys that maybe the rest of the public isn't all that comfortable with. And we get Patrick Reed back. So it lengthens the odds on a handful of golfers too, that we have just the best golfer that the DP World Tour has seen in quite some time at his level of dominance. So if we look at the top of the board, I guess even from a course perspective, I don't know, high level, Tom, did you have anything? We have not seen Stellenbosch run this event since I think it was like 99 or in the 90s.
Yeah.
So scorecard wise, looks like I kind of think off the tee is going to be pretty decent factor. I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, it looks like distance could come into play, right? I think it's relatively long for a 70. I think overall, like, still would focus on accuracy. I think we had this last week, right? With going back to Karen Country Club, we were sort of potentially looking at longer hitters. Looked like it was the way for the first couple of rounds, and eventually it peters out, and that's kind of accuracy guys. I think accuracy will sort of take over. Ultimately, because of the limited data, there was no data for 99, and the others are Sunshine Tour events with 3 rounds. I've kind of looked at it as a clean slate and just taken the players that I like, as opposed to trying to fit a certain skill set. I think the demands of South African courses are pretty similar across the board. So tried not to get too caught up in it this week. And quite frankly, there isn't that much information out there to do so if I wanted to.
Yeah, it seems, I think it's played as a par 72 when it was on the Sunshine Tour. Thriston Lawrence was the winner last time we had seen it. But yeah, I think obviously you can drive it long and far. It's just because like some of those par fours look like just different distances from like Kenya, where you could like really attack them. Like you're going to put more of a premium on probably some long irons here, just due to the brute fact of the length of this course. So from the top of the board, what's obviously interesting alongside Patrick Reed, you get Jaden Trey Scaper price there, and then Angel Ayora, who played from the front, struggled on Sunday, gets priced up there probably for the foreseeable future. I don't think any of these 3 really appealed to us, but the next range definitely did. So I think you can go with any of these probably 3 golfers. I think with Brandon Grace, Dean Burmeister, and Duplessis, who you were bang on with last week. Who's your pick of the trio?
Yeah, look, so I was going to go right back to the well with Duplessis, but in the end, I just looked at it, and over here in the UK, Grace and Duplessis were the same price, and there's only a marginal difference in the US, right? So I've gone with Grace. Look, this, whereas we're expecting Duplessis to go and get his first DP World Tour win and have to do it in his home Open, Brandon Grace is a 9-time DP World Tour winner, 2-time PGA Tour winner who's finished inside the top 7, a handful of times in majors as well. So as a player that's already won the South African Open, has already basically accomplished everything he can in golf, maybe not the major win, but that's probably a little bit beyond him, right? Especially at this point. But he's been inside the top 10 in 7 of his last 8 starts, the 21st at Live UK being the only kind of blight in that. And 4 of those first 5 efforts, and they were top 5s as well, including at the Saudi International. So you're just looking at a player that's just in incredible run of form. He's kicked off the new year in the same way as he ended last year, finishing inside the top 10 for the last two live events. He finished 9th at the Alfred Dunhill Championship the last time he was in this sort of field. And he was better placed as well. He was 5th after round 1 and 3rd after round 2. And then Sky, you remember, they cut that down to 54 holes. So it was a bit of a test trying to kick on forward from there. But really good with his irons last time out in Adelaide. Great numbers on approach. Playing incredibly well. And we're talking about a player that's outside of, like, I mean, Ernie Els is obviously one of them, but like outside of Reed, Schwartzel, and a couple of other guys, there's not really any more accomplished than him, right? So, yeah, absolutely love Brandon Grace and think the price is good.
So I think the decision you make here between Grace and Burmeister basically is how you think the field is good. The course is going to play. You could go the route. Ben just dropped his piece, which he had both of them, which I think you could walk away with both of those guys and be very comfortable. Because I think, motivation aside, like, they're probably a little long in this field. I think they're probably closer to that trio at the top than they are in the discrepancy of odds here, especially when you get them back in South Africa with a Masters invitation on the line. I think I am going around the route of a little bit more off the tee being relevant, which is just my side with Dean Burmeister, which is, I think on his best day, Burmeister, I mean, people might laugh, but like, I think he could win a major championship when he was kind of in his like peak at like a hard US Open. Like, we saw him, I think, enter the top 10 in like final rounds or on the weekends at big major championships. I think those big ballparks were like where a guy like him really could thrive. And, you know, he seems to be having, you know, a really good time on LIV. He's one of the golfers that have just bought in and really loves it. And I think a Masters invite for him, maybe just a little cherry on top, you know, from his current, you know, professional golf stakes. So maybe a stress-free type of event. South African Open could be a little bit good for him. He led the field in Australia and off the tee. And, you know, he ended up finishing, I think, where did he finish? Was he top 5, right? He finished 3rd, didn't he? That week in Australia, he finished sixth, excuse me, after being slow out in Australia. In Riyadh, excuse me. But off the tee putting was kind of his jam when he was at his best. I mean, yeah, you look at 3 majors from 2022 on inside the top 20. That Open Championship was kind of the recent one where he was kind of in the thick of it a little bit. And then I think it was that PGA Championship at Valhalla where, yeah, he was there on the weekend. So I just think of Burmeister in his peak, which was just one of the better drivers on the planet. And that, to me, when you put him at this crop of golfers around him, I think just separates him from the bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, like as you said, either or really, and quite confident on both. And don't hate the strategy of going after both as well. So there's definitely room for people on cards to take both, and wouldn't put anyone off doing it. I just marginally prefer Grace just because of the wider accomplishments, and I think there's just a bit more motivation actually for him to kind of get back into the winner's circle.
Totally. Burmeister's 25 in the States. Grace is 22.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really take a second look at anybody until I got to the hundreds, man. Like, I guess like Rosner's approach stats caught my eye. Nathan Kimsey feels a little bit long for his just run of form at 65-1.
Yeah.
But like, other than that, I'm not sure. I mean, if I wanted to go just the pure bomber angle, right, Del Rey has shown those pops. Norgard Muller's been terrible, but hits it longer than anyone. And then Skov Olesen seems to be finding like a bit more consistency in himself.
So it was Skov Olesen, Soderberg, and Kimsey for me were the 3 that I thought about, and in the end just thought it was better to kind of stick to South African and long shots, to be quite frank with you. But I thought maybe just if they were a slightly shorter golf course, they could come to the 4, Soderberg especially. But Olesen. But they were definitely 3 in my mind.
So the question as I entered into the triple digits really was like, is there any reason not to bet Davis Bryan again? Like, again, we bet on him a bunch. I ended up siding against him, but right off the jump, you know, I guess when I look at my first selection on the board, like I have only one that's shorter than 200-1 actually, which is I put him next side by side with Kota Kaneko, and I was on Kota His last time out, he played awesome. Like I thought like there was a chance that he really could have kind of elevated himself on the DP World Tour, T15 in the Guitar Masters. Now, this is where it does scare me in regards to what the course could play. And you maybe aren't getting the deeper odds just from a little bit more recognition of his worldwide play. He's not being skipped at 110-1. He was like 20 yards shorter than the field average, but also was like one of the most accurate people in the whole field. And I think he's proven at this point from the stats that we can get, he's a good putter. He's got some really good short game. And there are some paths that this course, I feel like, could get very difficult. I mean, back when it was like in its heyday, it was a difficult course. I think that was maybe one at like 5 under back in 99. But when I went to a par 72, 15 under was easy. So maybe we see a single digit winner and just a hold on for dear life, which I think Kota Kaneka actually, with his short game, can score enough that way. So I felt like just talent alone, I do prefer him to a lot of guys in this range, whether or not the course is going to be the best to hit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. I think it's just one of those where I think it is going to be a favourites and long shots card, to be quite honest with you. That the mid-range, as we talked about, there's 3 or 4 players that we kind of liked, but not enough strong sentiment to not go either take one from the top and try long shots. The only reason I've kind of not looked too much further is I just like South Africans in South Africa. Like, it's pretty much that simple for me. They always kind of come up to the I guess, in their own area.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so go into maybe a guy. Let's go. We can go back and forth. So who's next for you?
Yeah, so Oliver Becker for me is next up, and look, it looks fairly obvious because he won last week in Durban in a co-sanctioned event between the Challenge Tour and the Sunshine Tour. But it's actually a really extended run of play, right? Like he's been playing some good golf now for quite a while. He's got 2 wins, a second and a fourth in like his last 8 starts. And that fourth came in the Alfred Dunhill Championship, where he was only 3 shots shy of Drayden Shaper. And again, like, we don't know whether he would have been right in the mix in the final round if it went to 4 rounds. He finished alongside Ustays in that week. He beat John Parry, Kuvra, beat Brandon Grace that week, Pot Guy, who is a PGA Tour regular, right? Like, he was right up there, right in the mix with all those players. Bombs it off the tee, like, was one of the longest drivers on tour. When we've got the full season of stats, he was second behind Rory McIlroy in 2024. So absolutely launches it off the tee. Has got the kind of form of playing here in the past, finishing 3rd and 21st in his 2 visits to I think it's called the Blue Label Challenge, or whatever it's called. So yeah, really like kind of what he's done in a couple of starts here, what he's doing in his current sort of run. It's not the Blue Challenge, it's Vodacom Origins event. But yeah, two good starts here. Great game for the course if it does go longer. And as I say, 2 wins in his last 8 starts. Screams good value at 110-1.
I mean, it really wasn't that long ago. Maybe in our brain, it actually probably was. Like, those memes come that like, COVID was actually like 7 years ago versus, and that's kind of when some of these guys like got going. But like, Duplessis and Oliver Becker were like one in the conversation. That's kind of how we lumped them in that same mix. And yeah, it's a separate gap and a separate career path. And one was off for 18 months and one, like just one, so I think he's definitely interesting. I'll start with an obvious one for me, which is I'm just going back to the well with Cameron Adam. Mm-hmm. I don't see why I wouldn't. It was kind of interesting after we had the show on Monday. Martin Dempster, who does, if you want kind of the nitty gritty of some of the Scottish golfers, like he's really strong in getting pieces. He had a piece on Cameron Adam that said he felt like something was ready to like have his best round, like break out. Like He felt like he hadn't had the results, and said he just is a player who likes to get tournaments and rounds under his belt, and it's a little bit choppy for him right now in regards to like consistency. So we're now getting him for a second week in a row, top 10 last week. Irons weren't as good, but I think really highly of his talent overall. Seems to still have some distance in him, but the irons can lead a field. They can almost lead, the British Masters. They can lead this field. I think he did lead the British Masters. He can win the strokes gained approach bucket here, and the long irons we put to the test this week, and he can separate himself. I think you put him in the mix as a winner, as an amateur. He was in the hunt and won some big things. Like, I wouldn't be surprised that he doesn't back down on Sunday, especially after he kind of got that first sniff of it at the British Masters. So I'm just not going to quit him when the number is still, in my opinion, great at 200-1.
Yeah, and look, as much as like I've talked about South Africans being great in South Africa, right? It could be a very different story. Like Dylan Naidu beat Laurie Cantor in a playoff. Dean Burmese to beat Baratore and Svensson by a couple of strokes. Tristan Lawrence beat Clemens Sorday. Bozadenhout beat Jamie Donaldson. So it could have all gone very different, right? And that basically is the only decision to make here is like, do you want your long shots to be people playing at home, or do you want these Cameron Adams, Sky, who I definitely thought of you when I saw him kind of in the coverage for a little bit over the weekend, because very high on him and for good reason. His iron play is spectacular. So really good to see how he breaks out. I think it's a good opportunity for him with the field a bit lopsided, really, like really top heavy, and then kind of thins out, and good chance for Adams to test himself against some of the best players in the field or in the world, really, if he gets up there.
Yeah, I'm excited for him, and this is kind of a chance where, to your point, I mean, I wondered as an amateur if he played any of the events. I think it's still normally just kind of in their country's own that kind of play in the top events here. There's one this week. It actually was a super cool story. I'll see if I can pull his name. Judd Sundelson. He's the amateur this week. His grandpa and dad had like won or been in the final of the South African Open, and he was the winner last year at it. So it was cool doing the research on that. I still got 3 more. So let's go to you, Tom, next.
Yeah, final one for me, just a trio of selections this week. Ryan Van Velzen, who we've talked about an awful lot, right, on this show of kind of a potential bet. Comes in at crazy long odds, has been up there and thereabouts as a South African player for the last few years. Still just 24, Sky, but he's already a Sunshine Tour Order of Merit winner. Hasn't had the best of runs on the DP World Tour, to be very frank. Like, he's made limited upside so far, but showed signs last week, finishing 18th in the Kenya Open and was inside the top 10 after rounds 2 and 3. Only turned pro in 2021. As I said, he's already won that Sunshine Tour Order of Merit with a win in back-to-back seasons there. Lost in the playoff to Mikael Lindberg to stop 3 wins in that tour. And I just think with the fact that he has turned up twice now in 2 big South African events, this one when he finished second behind Tristan Lawrence, and then also at the behind Dean Burmester, who you're on this week, and second behind Sean Norris at the Alfred Dunhill Championship. I just think he's got it, right? I think he's got it. He's got the upside. Still just 24, hitting the ball really well last week inside the top 20 approaching tee to green. I don't see why we wouldn't take a chance on him. Like, he's huge prize. He's 175 to 1 in the US, right? And we know he's got the winning upside and the runner-up upside of 2 events of this ilk. If I hadn't seen that, I'd be far less interested. Like, the fact he's finished second in his home open already, behind someone like Burmester, and then second again behind Sean Norris, 2 kind of veterans of this tour at this point, really gives me reason for encouragement, especially after what he showed last week outside, albeit still in Africa, outside of his home country last week in Kenya.
Yeah, I love it. Was on my short list. Very intrigued, and
he is one that if it gets too long, then he is, because he's not the longest, right? Like, that is the downside. And
you could have told me honestly he was 34, not 24. That just kind of happens with some of these guys, you know. So the fact that he's so young, I'm definitely intrigued. Overall, let me get everything up. So I'm going to go three in a row here, Tom. So we'll start off first one. Who do I want to go first? We'll just go pricing in order. Riggs Johnston. So starting with Riggs, he was among the oddest golfers of last year, right? I mean, Think of him winning in what was his second start in Australia last year, right? Came through Q School after really not being that high of a prospect of the PGA Tour of Americas. He did get starts there via decent amateur career, and then wins that second start in Australia. Virtually does nothing the rest of the year, right? Like I think he was top 25 the next week, and it's like, oh man, like game on. That was in South Africa actually the next time out for him, which that event, he was really good late, struggled early, but even that was like the small field Nedbank. He did nothing, literally nothing the rest of the year. Made the cut at the Open Championship. I remember betting him right after that Open Championship because I think he popped in like approach that week, similar to Cam Adam. But then this year, again, more of the same. T33 at that Nedbank again. And then literally you're looking at miscuts until last week, T56 at the Magic Kenya Open. So this is kind of a little bit of the recipe of what you and I like to do. I mean, one, Riggs Johnson's long off the tee. So it like already fit this bill for me that I'm looking at some distance. And then he's showing these like random spouts of it. Like Dubai, that was a strong field. T20 heading into Sunday, right? Yeah. Best we've seen of him for a while. 3 miscuts in a row. I think they're within a stroke each of the time, including the last one in Qatar, which he was 14th after the first round, and then a 74 to miss on the number. So then you look at the Magic Kenya Open, 5th after the first round, goes 72-70, closes with a 67. Like life where weirdly enough has shown better play in South Africa, despite being American coming over and probably not having much comfort. And then the off the tee prowess with some minimal spikes here and there. Like I just like it of that caliber. I'm sure there's lots of guys you could make similar arguments to. He just, when I really felt it by off the tee, and then these 18 round pops started to fit that mold.
Yeah, to your point, fits in with everything we like, right? Like those kind of, even if it's just 1 or 2 round flashes, it's always encouraging. One of the most intriguing OWGR pages, because he's got that win in Australia, and then his third best finish is a 63rd in the Open Championship. So it's so dramatic for him, right? But all of these golfers are inconsistent until they're not, right? And that sounds really kind of straightforward, but you can't always just bet people that have gone 5th, 6th, 10th, 12th, 14th, because you're going to run out of these people. They're all going to be 20 to 1. You can't take them all, and they don't always hit, right? Whereas I think we're very, very clearly in a situation where either Patrick Reed's going to be too good this week and everyone can kind of forget it, or one of the leading South Africans going to hit, i.e. Burmester or Grace, as we picked out, or we're just going to get a real long shot. I think those are the kind of 3 scenarios, right? And I don't really think Patrick Reed's going to run away with it. So, I think we're going either top-heavy South Africans or these kind of long shots. And I like the thinking and what you've got there.
So that's the first one. Second one, Kieran Van Wyck. So if you're familiar with the name, it's because Van Wyck almost won a PGA Tour event last year as an amateur. He ended up finishing 4th, the Puerto Rico Open, to Carl Phillips, Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, Bramlett, Fisk were that top 5 with him. Again, at like way massive odds at the Puerto Rico Open as an amateur. So he then came and got a spot start at the Valspar where he missed the cut. However, his like ball striking numbers were awesome despite missing the cut. Just couldn't really putt. So I've had my eye on him for a while. Then he finally turns professional at the end of the year. He was really good at Sunshine Tour. Really good, maybe soft, like 1 top 3 to finish. Get some starts on the DP World Tour, and he never really came through with anything there. Missed the cut in Mauritius. Comes out 3rd on the Sunshine Tour in January. T27 on these co-sanction events, miscut T22. Depends how you want to look at that, right? Room for improvement, yes. Last week he was 2nd after the first round, shot a 63 in the opening round. And then in that 3rd place, he was a 62 on Saturday, finished 3rd. Like, I think he's just earning his stripes as a professional. You look into the greens in regulation last week, again, 54 holes on the Sunshine Tour / Hotel Planner. From the validity of it, looked like he was like 90% greens in regulation rate. Just was really good. And that kind of lines up with what we saw in Puerto Rico, where he was a big hitter who could hit a bunch of greens, did the same thing at the Valspar. So I think a ton of his talent. So I'm just going to take the shot at 350s there. And then, like, again, with Riggs, this guy, Van Wyck, and then my final guy, I'm going to do top 10s too, because this balanced of a card, we can stretch it out a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. I think anyone that has the kind of upside to finish top 5 in the price very open and then play this event early on in their career is someone that definitely has to kind of be looked at, is the main takeaway from it.
Okay, last one. So if you're friends with Ryan Baroff, you probably already bet this one. So there was actually DraftKings has had like 2 mistakes so far today. I don't know if you've seen anything that just happened, but they flipped everybody on their boards to minus 100,000, which like there was a rip of cash outs if you bet long shots. Like, so they're basically paying out every long shot. I'm sure it's going to be justified as that, but on Twitter, it's kind of going wild right now that DraftKings. The other issue they had, which is niche of the niche, there's 2 Luke Browns that exist in the world of golf. One's an Australian who hasn't been playing too well. And the other Luke Brown was on my short list to bet at like 150 to 200 to 1. Well, they priced this Luke Brown as the other Luke Brown, and he was 4,500 to 1 this morning. Second longest guy in the field. I mean, it's long gone. It's been adjusted, but he was like 4,500 to 2,000 to 1. So the real Luke Brown, which would pay out at those long ones too, is 340 to 1. And I'm good betting him there. Luke Brown right now, if you look at his form, he's coming in 3rd, 9th, 4th, 5th, 12th in his last 5 events, all playing on the Sunshine Tour here. So I think, bones to pick aside, like he has been in the thick of it, like playing exceptionally well for 5 events in a row. He's 27 years old. He finished 23rd actually at the Alfred Dunhill in December, where again, that was shortened. Let's see, he went 69, 70, 66 for him at that event. Like, I just think, somebody like him, when you're in this type of form, also if you go filter through the stats, he's one of the longer guys on the entire Sunshine Tour. So at that age, 27, kind of getting himself under him. I think from a win standpoint, he's only won, I think once. I got to make sure he was even professional at that. Yeah, it was early on the Sunshine Tour where he won an event. I mean, last year wasn't all that good. I think he's already bettered his top 5 rate compared to even last year. Close to matching like his career top 5s already this season with how well he is playing. But I just think a lot of good form, short order, like 340. Like I'm going to bet that with a great top 10, regardless of this misprice that was out there this morning. I'm in on Luke Brown.
Yeah, he was the first person I looked at, just purely that sea of like really good top finishes, right? Anyone that kind of reads these form guides, you just see the color block of them kind of performing really well. It stands out. The only thing, and you've mentioned it already, like he hasn't got the kind of real top upside that like a Van Velzen showing where he's got a couple of runner-ups at this level, right? But as you said as well, seems to be that he's sort of completely changed his output of kind of top 10 finishes over the last year. So you have to kind of re-sell yourself, I guess, like really tell yourself what this person is. A little bit kind of at the start of the year, we mentioned a couple of players that kind of come over from Australia and were suddenly, different levels. So yeah, I like it. I liked it a lot more when the price was completely wrong. But no, yeah, completely understand. He stood out for me. A bit like Veer Alouat last week. Like I think when you're in the sort of form that you're in, you can step up. And Alouat did play okay. He didn't place or anything like that. But yeah, I think good form is good form, and especially sometimes just pays off to play some of these lower tour events coming into this one, so you get kind of a good feel for your game, and then you can come in even with lower expectations of playing a bigger field and still play well.
Yep, bang on. Cool. All right, we'll give a shout out to our audio listeners. You can find us at Daily Fantasy Sports, Picks and Bets, The Mix. Super appreciative of all the love you guys give us. Again, you can find us Twitter at TomJacobs93, at Skyhook DFS. So we'll have, I think, just one more event in this international swing. We'll have the Joburg Open next week before I believe we go into a gap. And at that point, I think we've mentioned on the show, but likely for March into April, and we'll kind of see how it goes beyond it. Then we'll be on pause with the show unless Ryan and Tom are going to be able to figure out, depending on schedules. I think we'll probably just be on pause. We have our second child due in a few weeks. So that's just going to be taking up a little bit frequency of the time. So
to be clear, not mine and yours, Charles. So
yes. My wife's second child on the way here in a few weeks. So yeah, we'll be taking a pause for the show and kind of getting our bearings back under us and hitting our way when the big swing comes back for the DP World Tour. So Tom, if you want to go back through your betting card for us.
Yeah, it's Brandon Grace at 22 to 1. It is Oliver Becker at 110 to 1 and Ryan Van Velzen at 175 to 1. With a bit of a shout out to Henny Otto, who's playing really well at the lower level, has played well here in the past. Just a bit long in the tooth and maybe past it. But I thought it was interesting too, and he's got an 8 for the golf course and seemingly playing some of his best golf in a long time.
Yeah, he was right there with Luke Brown when you looked at that kind of stuff. So for me, Dean Burmeister 25 to 1, Kota Kaneko 110 to 1, Cameron Adam 200, Riggs Johnson 275, Luke Brown 340, Kieran Van Wyck 350 to 1. Like I said, I love last week. I love this week. This little 3-event stretch is one of my favorites of the DP World Tour. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and then we will catch you next week for the Joburg Open. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks, guys.